Karel Lanno is Chief Executive Officer at CEPS, a leading think tank on EU affairs, and joins us now. Karel, first things first then, that speech that we were just hearing about, incredibly important for von der Leyen. What did you make of it?
I think this was a good speech, had a good tone, made the right emphasis, as you said in the beginning, the emphasis on the fact that we are in a very exceptional, a very abnormal situation. We are in this war with Russia. We are helping Ukraine, but also underlining how critically important it is to maintain our system, to maintain the foundations of the European Union, Europe as we know it today, which is rule of law, democracy, market economy. And she stressed this extremely well, and I think that is very important. However, whether it's reaching citizens, I don't know, but it's certainly important, let's say, that she's passing on this message to the members of the European Parliament and hopefully also to national politicians, because we see in some member states, we've seen it in the Swedish elections this weekend, we are a bit afraid of what's going to happen in Italy. We have seen also manifestations of extreme right groups, for example, in Prague, but also we know that, for example, extreme left groups in Russia are less convinced that we need to have these strong sanctions against Russia, want to reduce the sanctions against Russia, and want, in the end, undermine our system or the strength of our democracy as we have it today. We see, for example, in the Swedish elections, the extreme right coming up very strongly, even if Sweden has just decided to join NATO, and to be stronger opposed from a neutral country as it was to a NATO member state today.
And it's obviously a particularly difficult time for the EU, given its proximity to what's happening in Ukraine. But you've touched upon some of the other challenges there, a desire by some to move to the right, some to the left. Do you think those wider divisions, the ideological divisions, can be overcome moving forward?
We will always have extreme right, extreme left, but if you see them rising, we are a bit more concerned. Certainly because we have also Eurobarometer, meaning we have the surveys of all the European countries which show there is a strong support for this war. So it's difficult to reconcile. You see, overall, Europeans are fairly united, and we've seen this over the last months as well, let's say, in decisions here in Brussels. Europeans are very united, let's say, that we need to support Ukraine and we cannot lose this war. But on the other hand, I mean, how to reconcile this with some things which you see in certain member states? And that's very, I would say, disconcerting. Also because people need to be aware, as we now see, just recently it came out, let's say, that Russia has backed up many special groups in the EU just to try to, dilute messages, to sow discord in member states. That Russia is an active, basically, underminer of our system, has been an active underminer of our system for the last so many years.
And it was interesting, just lastly, how much energy featured in this speech as well, particularly cutting that dependence on Russia when it comes to gas, but also looking at the cost of living crisis affecting millions in the EU. Which countries are the most vulnerable when it comes to that, do you think, and why?
I think it's mostly Southern European countries which are less well off, or which have kind of, on average, let's say, lower income per capita as compared to Northern Europe. Of course, sometimes countries with less efficient energy systems. Because the one thing which we need to know in this context is that energy policy has been, until today, and according to the treaty, it's a national competence. It's not a competence of the EU. Basically, the problems which we have today could have been avoided if we have been better aware about what Russia was doing. We knew that Russia was manipulating the prices already last year in September, when the first hikes in the prices appeared, for example, in certain countries, when Spain started to complain. Nobody knew that Russia was manipulating the prices. Probably a few specialists, but the public at large, the policymakers didn't know. If we were to have got much more policy insight into energy markets and much more stronger coordination here in Brussels, or at least at EU level, we could have acted much earlier. But also, we know that since the oil crisis in the 1970s, that we are vulnerable to this kind of manipulation, to the use of the energy weapon. Apparently, we haven't learned our lesson. We should have learned that lesson, and we should have known, let's say, they should be less dependent on, for example, the case of Germany, for 40% on Russian gas. That is extremely dangerous.
Okay, thanks for your thoughts. That's Karel Lanno, Chief Executive Officer at the think tank CEPS.
Thank you.